Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I am Shivangi Mishra. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Monday, the 10th of January. India's COVID-19 cases multiply. Vulnerable groups given vaccine boosters. IMF defers Pakistan's sixth review to release $1 billion under fund facility. And baby lost in chaos of Afghanistan, airlift found, returned to family. And now for all the details. India began administering precaution doses to healthcare workers, frontline workers and senior citizens with comorbidities on Monday amid the surge in COVID-19 cases driven by the Omicron variant. Since the pandemic began, India has recorded 35.7 million cases of COVID-19, the highest in the world after the United States.
India began administering booster doses of COVID-19 vaccine to frontline workers and vulnerable elderly people on Monday, with the fast-spreading Omicron variant fueling an almost eightfold rise in daily infections since the start of the year. In recent days, hundreds of healthcare and frontline workers, including police, have contracted the virus. Facing this rising third wave of infections, the government sent booster reminders to more than 10 million people who took their second dose of the Covaxin or Covishield shot 9 months ago. Only healthcare personnel, frontline workers and people above 60 years suffering from other health conditions are eligible for what the government calls a precaution dose.
मैं यहाँ पे अपनी थर्ड वैक्सीनेशन की डोज लेने आया हूँ और यहाँ पे जो सिस्टम वगैरह जो उनका है वो बहुत अच्छा है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुई, बहुत जल्दी काम हो गया है.
Today and tomorrow we will give the booster dose for all the healthcare workers, including the doctors, paramedical staff, nurses, house surgeons, PGs, security and sanitary patients.
India reported 179,723 new cases on Monday, most of them in the country's biggest cities, Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata, where Omicron has overtaken Delta as the most prevalent strain of the virus. There were 146 deaths reported on Monday, bringing the total toll to 483,936 since the pandemic first struck India in early 2020. Only the United States and Brazil have recorded more deaths. Tasked with protecting India's nearly 1.4 billion people from the virus, the government has administered 1.5 billion vaccine doses in total. About 67% of the country's 939 million adults have been double vaccinated.
The International Monetary Fund on Monday deferred Pakistan's consideration of completion of the sixth review and release of a $1 billion tranche under the extended funds facility. This came after a request from Islamabad, which has so far been unable to pass recommended fiscal tightening measures tied to the funds release. The International Monetary Fund or IMF on Monday deferred Pakistan's consideration of the completion of the sixth review and release of $1 billion tranche after receiving a request from Pakistani authorities. Spokesperson to the finance minister confirmed the consideration was scheduled for 12th of January and the new date is yet to be determined. This comes as Pakistan has so far been unable to pass recommend fiscal tightening measures tied to the release of the funding. As soon as the legislative procedures are completed in the parliament, the IMF board will consider it for the approval. Pakistan's finance ministry said, referring to a mid-year budget that slashes a number of duty exemptions and introduces new revenue measures. The legislation has met fierce resistance from the opposition amidst rising inflation and a widening current account deficit.
तो पूरे रीजन में पाकिस्तान सबसे ज्यादा महंगाई का शिकार है, बेरोजगारी सबसे ज्यादा पाकिस्तान में है और आज ये दोबारा एक जुल्म और बर्बरियत का नया कानून पास करने जा रहे हैं. पार्लियामेंट के अंदर 350 अरब के नए टैक्स लगाने जा रहे हैं. कारोबारी तबका हो, ताजर तबका हो, उन्होंने कहा तबाही आएगी, महंगाई का एक और तूफान आएगा.
PM Imran Khan-led PTI government has been criticized by the PMLN, PPP and other opposition parties, with some leaders demanding Khan to resign for failing to control inflation. Last week, the government said it was confident it would pass the budget later this month. Pakistani authorities have formed a 5-member committee to investigate the causes and lapses that led to the death of at least 23 tourists who were stranded during a snowstorm in the hill station of Murree this past weekend. The government has declared Murree as a calamity-hit area while rescue operations still continued till the last reports came in.
Pakistani authorities have formed a 5-member committee to investigate the causes and lapses in the tragedy at the popular hill station at Murree, where at least 23 people died in freezing temperatures after being stranded in their vehicles this past weekend. Snowfall, which began last Tuesday, continued at regular intervals, attracting thousands of tourists to enjoy the snow. Due to the huge number of visitors, many families ended up getting stranded on the roads. The government has declared the hill station as a calamity-hit area. Punjab Chief Minister Usman Buzdar on Twitter informed that in 7 days, the inquiry committee will present its report and action will be taken against those responsible for negligence without any discrimination for the tragedy in Murree, where military and civilian agencies are continuing relief efforts. Meanwhile, all vehicles have been barred from entering Murree until Monday night, while all main roads are said to be cleared of snow. Local media reported that over 100,000 vehicles had entered the hill station in the past 1 week. Opposition political leaders have criticized the government for its handling of the influx of tourists and inadequate preparations.
Moving on to news from Afghanistan. An infant baby boy handed in desperation to a soldier across an airport wall in the chaos of American evacuation of Afghanistan has been found and was reunited with his relatives in Kabul over the past weekend. The infant, Sohail Ahmadi, was just 2 months old when he went missing on August 19th, as thousands of people rushed to leave Afghanistan as it fell to the rule of Taliban.
An infant boy handed in desperation to a soldier across an airport wall in the chaos of American evacuation of Afghanistan has been found and was reunited with his relatives in Kabul on Saturday. During a tumultuous Afghan evacuation over the summer, Mirza Ali Ahmadi, the boy's father, who had worked as a security guard at the US Embassy, and his wife Suraya feared their son would get crushed in the crowd as they neared the airport gates en route to a flight to the United States. Baby Sohail Ahmadi was just 2 months old when he went missing on August 19. He was traced to Kabul home of a taxi driver, Hamid Safi, who was raising him as his own. After more than 7 weeks of negotiation and pleas, and ultimately brief detention by Taliban police, Safi finally handed the child back to his jubilant grandfather and other relatives in Kabul.
طفلک به نام محمد سهیل که در 5 ماه پیش در مدنوی گم شده با حمید جان پیدا کرده بود. باز با وکلانش به نام محمد قاسم که آمد دوزه ما باز حمید جان پیدا کردیم و بیار به کدیه اما توافق رساندیم تا که ثبوتایی که بود عکس‌ها و چیزایی که تلویزیونا نشر شده بود مطابق ثبوت بیار بریم دیگه جرماتش نکردیم اما طفلک امروز تسلیمش میکنیم.
امروز 18 ماه جدی یک روز تاریخی است برای ما که همین لباسا به دست ما آمده و یه برای خود گرفتیم و رسانه در حضور ما قرار دارند و این تسلیم دهی همین طفلک یه رسانه‌ای شد. ما بسیار قدردانی میکنیم از کسانی که آنها یعنی مسئول رسانه در این محل آمدن در خانه آمد جان و این طفلک برای ما سپاریدن.
Amid lots of tears and brokenness, the baby's return has brought joy to the family. The story highlights the plight of other families who were separated in the chaos of the evacuation in August post the Taliban takeover.
A fire swept through Rohingya refugee camp in southeastern Bangladesh on Sunday, destroying hundreds of homes according to officials and witnesses, though there were no immediate reports of casualties. The blaze hit Camp 16 in Cox's Bazar, a border district where more than 1 million Rohingya refugees live, with most having fled a military-led crackdown in Myanmar in 2017. Mohammad Shamsud Doza, a Bangladeshi government official, said the emergency workers had brought the fire under control. The cause of the blaze has not been established, he added. Another blaze tore through a COVID-19 treatment center for refugees in another refugee camp in the district last Sunday, causing no casualties. A devastating fire last March swept through the world's biggest refugee settlement in Cox's Bazar, killing at least 15 refugees and burning down more than 10,000 shanties. Tourists in India's northern Shimla were elated to witness a fresh spell of snow as the hill town turned to a winter wonderland over the past weekend. Meanwhile, dense fog caused low visibility in other parts of northern India, affecting movement of people who wore multiple layers of clothing to protect themselves from the cold. Tourists in India northern Shimla were elated to witness a fresh spell of snow as the hill turned into a winter wonderland over the past weekend. The little ones were seen having fun with friends and throwing snowballs at each other. Visitors, some of whom witnessed snow for the first time, said snowfall made their winter sojourn exquisite.
लाइव स्नोफॉल में इतना ज़्यादा अच्छा लग रहा है, ऐसा लग रहा है कॉटन कैंडीज हमारे ऊपर गिर रही हैं और बहुत मज़ा आ रहा है. वी आर एंजॉयिंग अ लॉट. और हम लोग आज जाने वाले थे और आज हम रुक गए वापस स्नोफॉल देख के. अब हम लोग कल प्लान करेंगे जाने का.
Meanwhile, dense fog caused low visibility in India's northern Firozpur city, affecting the movement of people who wore multiple layers of clothing to protect themselves from the cold.
सर काफ़ी धुंध पड़ रही है, इसकी वजह से हमारे को गाड़ी चलाने में काफ़ी दिक्कत आती है और मोटे कपड़े सर्दी की वजह से डाल के जॉकेट वगैरह जाना पड़ता है. काफ़ी प्रॉब्लम आ रही है.
Meanwhile, rain in capital New Delhi on Sunday brought the mercury down and people stayed indoors amid a weekend curfew due to rising COVID-19 cases. Snowfall in states like Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh has a direct impact on other northern states like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and in the national capital. South Asia's winters are not as cold as other regions such as North America, but the millions of poor here are hit harder because they live in the open and do not have enough warm clothes. Hindu devotees in southern India walked on fire embers to appease their god and pray for the well-being of their families. Scores of devotees thronged the tribal village of Kurigiri to perform this unique ritual.
Hindu devotees walked barefoot on burning embers in southern India's Kudigiri village to please a local temple deity, Lord Ayyappa, for prosperity and good fortune. The devotees called Mala Diaries created a 12 feet long, 4 feet wide and 2 feet deep pit and filled it with burning embers. Then they dipped their hand into a hot oil and walked barefoot on the embers as part of a bizarre ritual.
It's a holy ritual and annual celebration of God Ayyappa Swami. I visited last year too. Maladaris walk on hot bed. It's shocking to see.
The devotees also danced to the sound of traditional drums and shared sweets after performing special prayers. The annual pilgrimage to the Ayyappa temple in neighboring Kerala starts in the first week of January. Fire walking is an ancient ritual that originated in India and is often still practiced to show people devotion and faith in a deity.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on southasiannewsline.com. You can also visit us on facebook.com/SAsianNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsianNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Good night.